So the five of us have spent literally the last million years documenting and describing web culture. And we've come across some new and sometimes discouraging conundrums. We thought maybe we would look towards the past of collecting and cataloging culture in general, not just on the web, for some guidance. So in 1895, John Lomax was a student at the University of Texas, and he tells a story in his memoir about an attempt to share with his English professor a scroll of cowboy songs, which he transcribed as a child, only to have them brushed off as cheap and unworthy. So discouraged, he went back to his dormitory, and he burned the scroll. And those songs, they are now gone for forever.
It wasn't until years later, when he was at Harvard, that his new mentor told him that he should go and find that material while it was available, right? And so it's because of the efforts of Lomax and his family that we know about artists like Leadbelly, but also songs like Home on the Range and Get Along Little Dogies.
And it's a characteristic which sets the Lomaxes apart, because for so many other folklorists, they weren't as sort of semi-academic in their methodology. The Lomaxes saw their worth not only in collecting the culture that they were interested in, but they were also interested in studying it. And their hope was that they could encourage not only its continuance, but its further dissemination.
So as collectors of internet culture, this is exactly the attitude that we hope to further as maybe not necessarily internet folklorists, but probably something pretty close. We hope to draw conclusions, to make hypotheses, to learn. And like the culture collectors that came before us, we try to recognize the worth of all culture happening on the local level, even, and maybe especially, if that locality is a comment thread or a message board.
We remember Lomax as a collector of songs from the US, the West Indies, Bahamas, Haiti. But who will remember us as the collectors of macros from 4chan, Something Awful, YouTube, or Yahoo? It might seem ridiculous to ask these questions now, but we suffer from a uniquely modern problem.
An embarrassment of cultural riches. So while the Lomaxes had to cart around a 315-pound phonograph disc recorder and an impromptu studio in the back of their Ford sedan, we are in a constant state of lightweight, pervasive self-documentation and media creation.
Well, and maybe because of this, the stakes related to losing these kind of documents has gotten paradoxically higher. Think about it this way, right? Let's say that it's 10 years ago and you go and meet your friend at a coffee shop. How is it that the two of you are able to communicate? Well, the two of you are able to communicate because the air and the light around you literally transmits information.
Hi, how's it going?
I would love a latte.
Right, so, but let's say that somewhere through your third espresso that your friend starts dropping some sick beat. And you kind of get caught up in the moment and you're like, oh man, I'm just going to start freestyling.
Like an espresso bean, you know what I mean?
So that's a lot of fun. But it's not until the two of you part ways and you're walking down the street that you realize that that coffee shop flow is perfect. It's basically guaranteed to go platinum. The only problem is you can't remember it.
And that's because the air that transmits your words don't actually record them. If you want to document your conversation, you need a technology, like, say, for example, a tape recorder, video camera, or notepad.
Now, let's say instead that you meet that same friend inside of a chat window, right? Now, it might be a little bit harder for you to freestyle there, but if you say something genius, all you have to do is hit save.
So in digital spaces, the tool for communication and the tool for documentation are the same thing, the computer. But the irony is that now that we're able to save everything, we are still constantly throwing things away.
I mean, if you think about historians, they practically salivate over even the smallest thing. This tiny, crappy piece of broken Greek pottery, it's in a friggin' museum.
They charge admission.
Right? So if that's worth preserving, then what does that say when we delete something like all of GeoCities?
Culture isn't just valuable when you can stuff it full of DRM and sell it.
Culture is also valuable when you want to learn something about people.
But that's not to say that the solution is just save everything.
The problem of too little data is almost nothing compared to a slightly newer one, too much data. This immediately prompts the question of how do I decide which content is good enough to be worth documenting? Thinking about this in terms of memes makes this a lot easier. You think about spreading and sharing. This gives us a great filter. Good content is popular. We could state simply that popularity equates to some sort of cultural superiority, that popularity makes something worth documenting.
So the internet has certainly changed the way things become popular, and our mandate as internet researchers is to figure out how and why this happens, and also who is involved.
I mean, if you think about it, there's like 6 billion people in the world, and they're awake for about 16 hours a day each. That adds up to about 96 billion hours or man-hours of attention every day. So obviously, eyeballs are a scarce resource.
Fortunately, we can measure the eyeballs. Good internet culture leaves around a lot of digital detritus. Tweets, likes, views, comments, retweets, reblogs, news articles, even the occasional appearance on national television.
Holy grail.
Nice, yeah.
These become the currencies that we talk about when talking about culture, measuring culture.
But popularity indicates something else as well. Cultural assimilation. When you see something that you like, when you share it, you've internalized that content. That content is now in your freaking brain. You've made it part of yourself. It's now part of your cultural identity.
You've become a stakeholder in the success of this content in the wider world of competitive cultural production.
But what does it mean to be a cultural stakeholder?
Well, being a cultural stakeholder means that we're talking about everybody who's on your platform's ecosystem, right? All of us. Whether it's Paul Ford asking the question of why wasn't I consulted, or Baratunde Thurston reinventing the idea of mayor on Foursquare, we're all becoming aware of our sense of ownership, even if it isn't shared by anyone or everyone. So to illustrate this point, let me take you back to a point where the world was tub thumping. I rocked the Motorola StarTAC, and I spent a considerable portion of my time in a news group called
Alt.binaries.Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Now, this is where I first learned about the scan community. Now, these were people who would go out and buy magazines, right? Meticulously scan in images of their favorite pop stars, clean up those images in Paint Shop Pro, and then post them in 8 to 24 parts, of course, right?
Yeah, of course.
To news groups. Now, these people were not the actors. They weren't the photographers. They weren't the editor who actually commissioned the photograph. They weren't even the people who actually put the ink to paper. But let me tell you, they owned that scan. Now, when they saw their work actually show up in somebody other person's GeoCities homepage in their very same GeoCities neighborhood,
Oh, no, you didn't.
Don't even talk about
woo! That was a flame war.
So the assumption of mainstream media was, of course, these people don't own this content because they didn't create the original.
But the assumption on the scanner's point is, of course I own this. I put in all the work.
Neither can understand the other's point of view. But that's to be expected after 200 years of industrialization, 60 years of mass media saturation. We put all of the worth on the original.
And that's because credit has always been currency of cultural production, but it's even more so online. Whether you laid the pixels yourself, pika by pika, or you made that Facebook wall post that you think spread the meme, you want to get paid. You want to get paid in retweets and reblogs and +1 confirms. Media begets new media, begets iteration, duplication, and remix.
Every person who's touched it or has touched by it feels some sort of ownership of that type of media. But the response of the community can be a mixed bag. Let me introduce you to the concept of something.
First.
Guys, come on. First, the first commenter on any video, message board, or blog.
So the internet's a big place, and to be able to claim first at something is certainly a huge honor indeed. So it's a way for someone to stake their claim, to say that they were the first to do something on their way towards the horizon of internet famedom.
Throughout history, humanity has struggled to be the first at meaningless activities. First on the moon, tallest building, biggest army. There is a similar arms race on the internet to do something, to be the first to do something.
And there are an unlimited number of firsts to be had on the internet. And the internet also serves as documentation of something happening. But it's also hard to find out when and where that something actually took place online, thus leading to infighting like the Hatfields and McCoys. You can see the effects, but not necessarily the origin.
Take, for example, Keyboard Cat. Now, Charlie Schmidt was the one who actually made the original cat video of the cat playing the piano, but it took Brad O'Farrell to actually find the video on YouTube, remix it, and actually spark the actual meme.
And what this shows us is that there's no built-in natural way for the web to track attribution. And because of this, well, the 5 of us think that it's really important to give credit where credit is due.
And this is why projects like Know Your Meme are so important. They can let the community document things that the 5 of us can't.
And so we'd love it if you could all take a moment to help us say thank you to our community. Know Your Meme could not function without the moderators and community members that actually make it what it is. So if you could join us in giving them, not us, a round of applause.
Yes, to our contributors.
But thanks a lot. So that's the end of our talk. Yeah. We also wanted to say, so these ideas and others like them, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, we're some of us working now on a book that's going to collect some of these ideas. It's this last link here. We're funding it on Kickstarter. So if you're interested, you can keep up with these ideas there. And thanks a lot.
Thank
you.